everybody, and welcome back to Virtually Starlight for our disaster week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Christopher Brady. I'm the artistic director here at Starlight Theater. Again, just so we're all caught up, because of the coronavirus, we had to cancel our season. So we're trying to put up a Virtually Starlight episode every evening where we would have had a show before. And as you know, this is certainly taking its fiscal toll on us. So if you are able to in any way, shape, or form, go ahead and send some donations over to rbcdonate.com. Anything, everything, we totally appreciate it. But we're going to get down to business anyway. And I'm going to introduce you first to, what is it? The lead headline of tonight that is not our Broadway star, someone from our own ranks, who you know, most of you should know, at least know of the legend. He was out here in the 90s, early 2000s as well, Grease, T-Birds. And then he went off to pursue a career. He was in the tour of Full Monty, one of my favorite shows of all time, as well as Kinky Boots, and has appeared on TV and a ton of different stuff that I'm going to let him talk to you about. Mr. Joe Coots. Welcome, Joe.
Glad to be here.
We really do miss the applause track.
I do miss the applause track. I'm going to give myself an applause.
Oh, well done, sir. Well done.
How you doing, buddy? You're so handsome. You're a handsome son of a gun.
The first thing you need to know about Joe is he's a liar. So
no, I have perfect vision, and that's a great mustache.
Well, it's getting to be like a bit Yosemite Sam, I think. I was going for like a Tombstone thing.
I'm gonna get you on Yellowstone. You'd be a great character on Yellowstone.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah. Do that, would you? That'd be great.
No problem.
Now we are introducing this segment called Joe Knows. Now, Joe Coots, if you don't know this dude, you're gonna get to know him tonight. Just a super personable dude, great guy all around, and he just gets to know people. And he has done some cool stuff in his life, and so he has been gracious enough to go, hey, I can get some of these people to talk about these. When I told him our lineup, that we had, he was like, oh, I know people from all these shows that could possibly come out. So we chose this sweet outside location for everybody. We get to go ahead and check out his yard, which is fantastic looking, by the way. Well manicured, Joe.
Thanks. Just mowed it today.
Real quickly, before we invite our wonderful starlet on, what have you been up to since our patrons last saw you? When would they have last seen you, Joe?
Last seen me as in when? Like
Starlight.
Starlight? I would have been, the last thing I think I ever did at Starlight was probably Rebels or Grease with you back in the 2001 or 2 or something like that. We were the T-Birds.
Yes, we were.
You were Kaniki, and I was one of them, one of the T-Birds. I don't know who it was.
Sunny, my friend. You were Sunny.
Sunny Latte. Hey, Miss Lynch. Miss Lynch. Yeah.
Okay, so in these segments, everybody, Joe's going to be on here, and it's going to be me, Joe, and Joe's good friends. And tonight we have a very special treat because we're putting on Disaster. In one of the awesome things about Disaster and doing it at Starlight is that nobody really knows it. Not around our area, at least. And it's one of the coolest things you don't know. And to explain it all, and to talk about her role in it as well, Joe has invited an original Broadway cast member, but not only that, she's been with this show since, and I'll let her explain it, but almost since the inception of it all. She has been on Broadway in Disaster. Kinky Boots, yes.
Maggie and I did Kinky Boots together. She did on Broadway, did on tour. And I think her best role is being the mom to my best friend Thomas, who's 3 years old. And he loves Cat in the Hat.
So everybody throw up the Cat in the Hat memes.
Yeah,
in
Cat in the Hat, yeah.
She's also written her own stuff. I did a little bit of research, and I can't wait to hear that. She's going to do a one-woman show tonight. So we're welcoming her on. Everybody, please welcome Maggie McDowell.
Hello.
Maggie McDowell.
I'm so excited to be here.
where are you coming to us from, Maggie?
So I live in New York City, but I just relocated near my parents in Connecticut. We were quarantined in a tiny one-bedroom apartment for about 65 days. And then we came to be near Granny and Grandpa, you know, in the burbs. So I'm in Connecticut right now.
Beautiful.
Where I grew up. Yes.
Oh,
that sounds fantastic.
Look at me. I'm in Connecticut, everybody. Look at me.
No, not at all. Not even a little bit.
I love those. I love those videos of little Thomas going through like small parks in New York City. Now he's like sidewalks and streets.
He doesn't know what to do with himself. The freedom is crazy. I have a 3-year-old son, and he totally has a theater bug. In our new apartment, he's got a fireplace now, and he's already decided it's his stage. He just gets up there with his Cat in the hat and starts singing and dancing and like reciting Green Eggs and Ham, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so in for it.
I love him.
One I did.
Make sure to open the flue. Otherwise, it gets stuck in there.
But he loves Joe Coots. He's just obsessed with him. They were best buds when we did Kinky Boots and a Gun Clip this past year. And so glad we can reconnect virtually
I know.
tonight.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And thank you again.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So your son and I have that in common. We're both obsessed with Joe Coots.
The dog is from somewhere else right now. Sorry. No.
Sorry, no, the dog's behind me.
It's okay.
So Maggie's just out there going, shh, and there's no dog?
No,
yes.
My dog is barking at the dog in Joe Coots' yard.
Are you serious?
That's hilarious.
Hey, shut up!
Yes, my dog is like,
I'll shoot the dog.
Okay, Maggie, just a brief question about let's get to know you just a little bit with the age-old question. How did you get into musical theater?
Oh my gosh. Well, like my son, when I was about 2 years old, I was singing and dancing in front of our fireplace. And my parents were like, oh boy, she loves this. And ever since I was a little girl, I just wanted to sing and dance. And I would do it for my stuffed animals and anybody who would listen. And now I'm just so thankful that people pay me to, sing and dance. And now I'm doing it in my living room again. So it's all full circle.
It's like full circle.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, but I went to college in Nashville, Tennessee at Belmont University. I got a degree in musical theater and then moved to New York City, and the rest is history.
Sweet history, because your first thing you did in New York was it the one you wrote?
No. So the little like one woman show that I wrote, I did that back in 2018, right after my son was born. And it's a concert with a lot of stories about living in New York City and different audition experiences and having a kid in New York City and all of the mishaps and mayhem and all that crazy stuff and a couple of disaster stories. So, so that was something that I did, recently actually. But Disaster was my second off-Broadway show, but it was towards the beginning of my career. And then that was off-Broadway, and then it was my Broadway debut. So it was a dream come true, and I couldn't have picked a better show or cast to make a debut with because it really is a spectacular show.
Nice. Good awesome. Plug. I like that you're leading up to this. I love it.
So special. Y'all are just gonna love it. I wish you didn't have to wait till next summer, but it's the right, we all get it. We're all there. So it's worth it.
So Maggie, you literally played every part. You played every track in that show, female tracks in that show.
Yeah, so in a weird way, at the end of the day, I have played pretty much all the female principals, even though I wasn't a swing. It just so happens that throughout the years with my history with the show, I've gotten to do a bunch of them. So yeah, I feel like it's forever ingrained in my brain. So if anyone has any questions, I feel like I still am like off book with the script.
Now, did you book that after we got off tour? Is that right?
No, I actually booked it before the tour. I did Off-Broadway in 2013 to 2014 and was on tour in 2015 with Kinky Boots, which is where Joe and I met.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, no, I booked Disaster Off-Broadway from an open call in New York City, and Seth Rudetsky was at the piano. And I freaked out. I was like, why is he the accompanist? He's like here. And I'll never forget, he told me that he liked my belt. And I looked down to see if I was wearing a belt. And then I realized he was looking at my vocal belt.
Only you would ask that.
I was, because I was so nervous.
Wearing a belt?
Like, my belt? I didn't think I wore a belt today. But yeah, I booked the Off-Broadway from an open call.
Wow. But then we got off tour. You went back and did. Then when it came on Broadway, you did it on Broadway.
Yeah, I left.
That's what
do it on Broadway. So that's kind of that weird timeline. But and my audition, my final callback for Disaster Off-Broadway was so last minute that I was actually. I talk about this in my one-woman show, but I was actually picking up the girl I nannied for at school when they called me, and her mom let me bring her to my final callback.
Oh,
he was in the audition room with me, and Seth Rudetsky and Jap Plotnick, who wrote the show, I think they thought she was my kid because she was blonde, but this was like years ago. I was like way too young, but yeah, and that night she like asked me to sing the song I sang in my audition, but she was like, "Could you sing it a little quieter?" It was really loud before, but
and you were like, weird, because Seth said he liked my belt. But
I know.
whatever.
I was like, you don't.
exactly.
Let me tell you something. Most people like when I sing loud. So, but yeah, so very like crazy journey getting into the production, and it was life changing, and your audiences will just love it because it is so. It's the funniest show I've ever been a part of. It is so funny. Like I've never been in a show where it was so hard to keep character because we're just laughing constantly. It's the best.
It's awesome.
Before we dive too deep into Disaster, because we're going to talk about Disaster, I do want our audience here to just understand what we're talking about. Now, we bring in people and we're like, oh, she's from Broadway. And people are like, that's nice. I want to show everybody a clip of you singing. When Seth Rudetsky says, I like your belt, I mean, I'm watching this clip here and I'm like, I don't understand. Now, I sing, but not. This is different. This is like you're moving effortlessly from these different ranges. I just want everybody to see this real quick.
Okay.
She's ridiculous.
That's awesome.
Thank
That's
you.
nothing.
That's from Disaster.
That is a song from Disaster.
Seth loves a good option up. I'll tell you that much. That is not the original Helen Reddy arrangement from the 70s. We Carrie Butler originated the role on Broadway, and she and various other women that did the role before her and whatnot made all those amazing riffs and options up that Seth loves so dearly. And so there you go.
Maggie, was that like Studio 54 or something?
That was at the Green Room 42 in New York City.
42, yeah,
which is a great new venue.
Y'all should have seen Maggie do Lauren and Kinky Boots.
We had so much fun.
It's literally one of the best performances and she came out on our tour as a swing, and I'm like, that needs to be the Lauren.
Thank you. Oh,
So anybody watching this, sorry if I insulted you, but she was my vote.
Thank
I
you.
gave her my vote. Not that I had a vote, but I gave her my vote.
Well, it was
Phenomenal.
a dream role.
Comedic
Lauren,
chops. Comedic
Lauren
chops.
is a dream role, and I'm so glad we got to do it in a gunquit together because that was a really special time.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
I would. One of those things is we certainly talk about Kinky Boots whenever we can do that out here as well. But I know they just did it out at the Muni. I don't know if that's a thing down in St. Louis, and I heard great things about it.
I did that one.
Maggie,
You
was
were
in it.
in that one?
Yeah.
See, awesome. Did you just do?
Was the
Hey, were you in the cast talkback for it?
The recent one
Yeah,
just now, like a couple weeks ago?
yeah, that
No,
one.
I wasn't. I wasn't there.
Oh, okay. Only because I was like, shoot, I watched that. I didn't see you.
No, I wasn't there. It's all good.
Oh, okay. Whew. Regardless, guys, you hear a lot of stories in Broadway when it comes to swing. Swing's always this super talented position, because I will let Maggie explain it. But what is a swing?
Okay, so a lot of people don't know this, but when you go and see a Broadway show or a show on tour, you have, your female ensemble, your male ensemble, you've got all the leads. And then there are people that sit off stage, raring to go to do all of the tracks. So, for instance, in Kinky Boots, there's about maybe like 7 or 8 female tracks. And I learned 5 of them. And so at any point, a stage manager can call you from your dressing room and say, get into costume, you're going on stage. I understudied in Kinky Boots. I was a swing on tour, and I did it on Broadway, and I understudied Lauren and the other female lead, and then all the ensemble women. And so, so when you see that in your program, it's an understudy, but it's someone who is, off stage so that they can fill in any of the holes when someone gets sick, or even mid-show if someone gets injured or has to call out because of whatever reason. So swings are superheroes, and I actually feel like even though I didn't swing in Disaster, I understudied, and there was a very funny, I don't know when we'll have time for this, but there's a funny story about the first week we opened off Broadway that I went on for 4 roles in 4 shows. And so I feel like it set me up to open up my mind to maybe I could be a swing one day. And then when Kinky Boots said, do you want to be a swing? I said, yeah, I think I could do that. Because of my time with Disaster off Broadway, I was like, well, I did perform the show 3 different times without any rehearsal in 3 different roles, so I think I could do it. So it's all very interlocking, but yes, give your swings so much credit. And side note, if you ever see in your program at a touring house or on Broadway or wherever you see theater, if you ever see that an understudy is on, I urge you not to go, oh, what a bummer, because you just don't know. That person is just as talented, and they're going to bring so much amazing energy to the role that night. So don't ever be bummed when an understudy goes on, because they're so excited to be there, and and likewise the swings. So
yeah,
1,000% agreed.
Yeah,
Every
and
time I see a swing go on, you look through their eyes, and they're so jacked and they're so excited.
yeah,
And all of us that get roles, everybody's just as good. Just sometimes it's
everyone just has different.
The match is wrong, or exactly.
Yeah, and everyone has different strengths, and some people can do, multiple things, and it also
sometimes the swing makes a lot more money too.
Yeah.
Because they get bumped up every time they go on. They get a little bump.
So just side note to all you theater goers out there that might not be aware, it's a really cool thing to know about. So.
Okay, so we're going to delve into Disaster just for a second, and then I'm also going to bring on somebody who's in our cast, and he got a special story because he also saw it on Broadway. So you guys go look back. And hopefully, if you have time, we got another cast member that also likes to say hi. But we're not going to keep you or abuse your time because it's so cool of you to do this with us.
Oh my gosh! No, I'm here to chat and hang.
Thomas is in bed.
He's in bed. My husband's at Target. Right. We're fine.
All right, so midnight it is. Got it. Okay, so here's the question then, because for any of our patrons that are watching now, or they will watch, because it's recorded, stuff like that. What is Disaster about?
Okay, so Disaster is it's a jukebox musical. We'll talk more about that later in terms of how I feel it breaks all the misconceptions of jukebox musicals. But it is a 1970s movie musical. So all of your favorite 1970s disaster films like Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, Airplane, the writers Seth Rudetsky, who you might have heard on Sirius XM, and Jack Plotnick, who is an amazing, who wrote it, Seth's friend. He's been in a ton of movies and TV and like every commercial you've like ever seen. They wrote it. It was years in the making, and they basically took all your favorite songs from the 1970s and wrote their own disaster movie. And so it uses all, music from the 70s that you heard on the radio, and they have intertwined this hilarious story about a group of people that get on a casino on a ship, and everything goes wrong, just like in a disaster movie. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
What goes wrong, out of curiosity?
Everything, literally everything. So what they've done really well is, if you know those movies, there are so many different archetypes. We see at the beginning of the show, and this won't give any spoilers away, but there's a scientist. And as you know, in every disaster movie, there's always a scientist warning everyone that something bad is going to happen, but no one ever listens to him. That is the role that Seth Rudetsky played. And then you've got all these characters. You've got the casino owner, who's kind of the villain. You've got the old married couple. You've got the reporter who's trying to break the news of, it's the opening night of the casino. You've got all these archetypes that you'll see. You've got the nun with a guitar, like an Airplane. And she has a gambling addiction. So you have all these amazing characters and archetypes that are so... Sorry, Joe, that I got so boring.
I know. Joe's like, I'm not here.
He's like, I gotta pee. I'll see you later. Anyway, you have all these archetypes, and so everything goes wrong. And the scientist warns us the whole first act, and it all sets it up. And then right before Act 1 ends, we see everything go haywire. And throughout Act 2, literally everything goes wrong to a ridiculous and hilarious point where you're just like, wow, what else could go wrong?
Yeah.
And it's, yeah.
I think one of my favorite parts is, and you brushed on, there's these songs from the 70s, like Hot Stuff, Saturday Night, Ben, 25 or 6 to 4. What?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you got your bug spray.
Sorry, I had to get bug spray.
No, you're so entertaining.
So it's bugs are killing me.
This is actually very topical, Joe, because there are killer bees in Disaster. So
hey, hold on. Okay, we're back to normal.
I didn't experience that, but I feel like I need to I'm tasting the bug spray in my mouth. Virtually.
Yeah, he's spraying it right at him.
Little buddy, these are rough.
But one of my favorite things is that part of the comedy comes from how the songs and their placement within the show, right? Like once somebody starts singing, you're like, awesome. They put that in.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I was talking about before when I was saying you hear the term jukebox musical, and, there have been great jukebox musicals in the past, but occasionally the song comes on in a jukebox show and you're kind of like, okay, that's fine. But every single song in Disaster forwards the plot and is so specific. And what's crazy is that you'll want to go home and fact check the lyrics because they fit so perfectly within the plot that you cannot even believe that these men were so brilliant to think of these lyrics because they happen in the show, and you roll over laughing and you just go, no, that's not really what that song said, is it? Like, that's no,
Yeah.
because it is intertwined so well. And so that's kind of what I was saying before, was that even though it's a jukebox musical, it's like more than that. It goes a step further, whereas it's almost as if the songs were written for this, in the way that they use them. Does that make sense?
That's awesome.
Yes, that's actually a good explanation of it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So speaking of the scientist, this is who we're going to bring on right now. So the person that plays our Ted, he's also a local celeb from the news, just so you know.
Oh, amazing. I love that.
Who is it? I'm so...
You don't know who it is, Coots? All right.
I'm very curious.
We're bringing on, for everybody's viewing pleasure, but certainly to talk to you, Maggie, and ask you a question. This is Mr. Eric Wilson.
Oh,
hey guys.
I love him.
Hi.
First of all,
Wilson.
I don't feel like I even deserve to be in the same screen with you, but I'm also super excited that I get to see face-to-face Coach Walls from Modern Family. Coots, I tell you, I watched that episode. I know we're getting off track here, but I watched that episode and I had it on DVR and I had to pause it. I was like, wait a minute, that's Coots. So I fast forwarded to watch the credits. And so, yeah, that was exciting. But Maggie, I am still... Well, I was going to say, Maggie, I'm still overwhelmed by the I Am Woman. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh.
It's
The
really
only belt I have to show off is the actual belt that I'm wearing. So
I love that.
So Maggie, Eric Wilson is like a major celebrity back home. He's the main news anchor on.
Oh my gosh, I
TVO.
love it.
Yeah,
you are too kind, Joe. That's my job, but I get to hang out at the theater every summer. Part of the criteria for me coming to work for this place was for them to continue to support Starlight in the summer, and those schedules can be super crazy, but they've really been accommodating, and I like it so much. It's important for me. That's a whole nother topic of how I got involved in the theater, and Chris has heard it a million times, but I do want to talk about Disaster because. And Chris mentioned this. We saw it in New York. We were actually in town for Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction when Cheap Trick was inducted. It was the first week of April in 2016. So we saw it, day of Rush tickets. We don't know anything about it, and just happened to see Paul Castri's name in the cast, fellow Rockfordian. So
I love that. I didn't realize
ended up having so cool, and we had 4th row seats. Because you know how Day of Rush can work sometimes. Yeah. My daughter and I are very into theater. My wife, not so much, but she went, and it is now her all-time favorite show, and that includes any show that I've been in or that my daughter's been in. It's her.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And Chris, true story, right? I have bugged you for 3 years to do this show, right?
I don't remember. But
yes. Seriously, ever since it became available, I bugged Chris, and Chris is like, yeah, okay. When it fits the schedule, yeah. And then it fit, and we got all excited about it. And actually, confession time too. I picked Paul Castri's brain before I had my audition, just to be like, hey man, I really want to do this part. What would you suggest? And so he offered me some tips, and I guess it worked because Chris took a chance and cast me as Ted. And
oh my gosh, you would be such a great Ted. And you know what? Even though it's a super bummer that we have to wait, all theater is on pause right now. I feel like Disaster will be like really topical after this global pandemic. I think everyone will be kind of like, okay, because I feel like 2020 has been like such a crazy year. Everyone will be
2020 has literally been a disaster.
It has. And so, you know what? Maybe it's better that I think people will relate and they'll they'll feel so much better about their lives after they watch these people on stage getting like attacked by killer bees and piranhas. They'll be like, oh,
yeah, that's nothing compared to what we survived.
Bad. At least I'm not getting attacked by, killer rats.
Well, story.
Oh, that's awesome.
At the beginning of this whole pandemic,
Chris, we can't hear you.
Oh no!
I can hear him.
I can't hear him.
I don't know. Can everybody else hear? Tell me if you can't hear in the comments. You can hear Eric? Okay, it's just Joe. It's just Joe, everybody. Yeah. Joe, looks like you got to sign out again.
Nothing.
Let
me go inside. Hold me. Even saw the bugs.
So many
bugs. Chris,
right
can I hear
before all of this went down, I can hear you, Joe.
I don't really care if I hear him.
Perfect. Can anybody see? Everybody else hears me, Joe.
Yeah, you sound good.
He's just gonna.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't
hear
Joe,
you, Chris.
Can you else talk to Joe?
Wait, maybe my.
Joe, maybe you need to get closer to the camera.
He's not gonna stop talking.
How about this close? Is this close enough?
That's perfect.
Do that where you sign out and sign back in. Sometimes.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me do that real quick. Sorry, guys. Eric, you're handsome. I'll be right back.
Good
You're
time.
too kind.
Right before everything went, right before we got kicked out of our space, and they were like, "Hey, we're going to be off for the next 2 weeks or whatever." We got to planning our script pretty much, or not our script, our set, because we didn't have it. We had other complications at the theater as well at the time, so this was really late in the process. So, because, and I'm adding Joe. Joe, can you hear?
Yes, I hear you.
All right.
Welcome back.
Oh, all right, I missed you guys. I missed you. 30 seconds, I missed you.
So we designed a set, basically, that was super simple, which of course works really well for the show, right?
Yes.
And it all falls down at the end. I'm kind of giving it all away. But well, just because, you want 3 walls, right? They're like, at minimum, let's put up 3 walls, and we got a set. So we really had fun with this set. And when I saw the one on Broadway, it's not elaborate, but it's not for Broadway standards, but it certainly was bigger than, say, the off-Broadway. Can you speak to the progression of the show? Because you were in it through the inception, right?
Yeah, so I did the show off-Broadway, and we did it in a very teeny tiny off-Broadway theater, and it was a very simple set. it could fit like 10 people on stage at once. It was really, cozy, and part of what is funny about Disaster is the use of puppetry and is kitschy the right word, but just kind of that like thrown together, kind of using fabric as water, that kind of Monty Python humor of just very disheveled, and it knows itself. Disaster knows what it is. It knows that it's not supposed to be this insanely big budgeted Broadway spectacular. It is what makes it so funny is the kind of waiting for Guffman feel of people putting on this show and being fish and having shark fins on their backs, and so off Broadway seriously, yes, shark arms, and super cheap puppets and stuff, because that adds to the humor of it, and that worked really well off Broadway. And for Broadway, they did up the scales. They kept things as simple as possible, while still maintaining that down-to-earth kind of raw comedy. And I think that for people in the know, going to see it expecting this multi-million-dollar Broadway spectacular, that's not what it was trying to be. So I think that could have confused some people. But if you got it, you knew, oh, this is what it is. They're making fun of themselves, and they know what they're doing. And this guy has sharks on his hand, and So that progression was, very hard for them to figure out the balance of keeping it raw and down to earth and gritty and, kitschy, but also being a Broadway musical. That's tricky. But I think that's part of why it also works really well regionally. I did the first regional production of it in Connecticut with Seth Rudetsky and with Jack, the director and co-writer. And they were able to actually add a couple things that they couldn't do on Broadway because of the budget. So it was
What did they add? Out of curiosity, what did they add?
It kind of gives something away. I don't know if it's maybe people won't remember in a year, but
Don't forget it.
they always wanted, in the original off-Broadway poster, it said disaster, and it was a disco ball with two legs sticking out underneath the disco ball, and that was our poster off-Broadway. And Seth and Jeff always wanted Act 1 to end with the curtains closing and the disco ball in the middle with legs underneath it. And when we did it in Connecticut Rep, Seth was the reporter again, and Jack directed again. And they were able to swing a disco ball from the center of the auditorium, and we did a slow-mo crash sequence.
Oh, God.
And we puppeteered feet that wiggled, and the end of Act 1 was this guy stuck under a disco ball. I mean, it was amazing. But on Broadway, they just didn't have the,
A little Phantom of the Opera-esque.
Yeah, seriously. So I hope I didn't give too much away. I don't know what is.
That doesn't give anything away. That's actually not a thing. It's not in the script.
Yeah, it's not in the script. It was just their kind of dream, what can we do this? And they were like,
people go to the show and don't expect a disaster to happen at some point in the first act, well, then they just be questioning,
Exactly.
What is the show really about? Eric, while you're here, can you tell me, since you saw the Broadway, you tell me what your favorite part was, and then we can let Maggie kind of just, freeform off of that.
My favorite part for the show was the running gag, and I don't want to spoil too much of it either, but
I know, right?
Ben Lisa is my favorite running gag. And
yes.
I don't know how to explain it more, right? I don't know how to explain it more without giving it away.
Wait, you said Ben Lisa?
Yes. Yeah, the whole running gag of Ben.
Ben's already doing a thing. Ben's doing a whole skit here on Virtual Starlight where he's going to be doing it. So we're not giving anything away. Go ahead. Talk about it.
So, okay, so then the running gag that everybody knows, it's the same actor playing the twin brother and twin sister. That was my favorite part in the whole show. And I think they gave me the most laughs too. And the other part was, and it'd be hard to argue this, but Jennifer Simard was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I swear she was robbed of a Tony, and she should have been allowed to perform.
I know.
Maggie agrees.
I agree. I'm having a moment. I love Jen with all of my heart, and I agree with everything you just said.
She was so good. So I'm going to turn the tables on you. Do you have a favorite part or moment in the show either you were part of or that you observed?
Well, real quick, because we were just talking about the puppetry and how that adds so much to the comedy. Ben and Lisa, who are the twins, the brother and sister twins of the showgirl in the show, are played by one actor, and he goes back and forth between being a boy and a girl with the use of, whatever you choose, a hat with pigtails. And then in Act 2, when everything is kind of going haywire, we see a dummy being carried around on stage and switching clothes, which for the props master is a lot to track, but it works out. It really is worth it. So for those of you, and that's what I was talking about, was that how the puppets and the different props are so, and our dummies and all of the productions that I've done never had faces. They were just these cloth, super, and I think that would make it funnier. And when Ben and Lisa talk to each other as these inanimate objects, it's just, and when they fight with each other, it's just brilliant. And I have to speak on Jen Simard. She has become a dear friend of mine throughout the years. She was a huge mentor to me in Disaster was my Broadway debut, and she just carried me, just showed me the ropes and encouraged me, and she was such a team player. And yeah, put Samard on. There was a hashtag rolling around because if you can look up her amazing performance, she was just groundbreaking in this role. I don't think anybody had ever seen anything like it on Broadway. It was her comedy was so dry and understated, and it really was comedic genius. I've never seen anything like it.
And so funny, like tear laughter. I mean, that's how we experienced the show. Like it was funny, we were crying.
So exactly, and I guess what I would say then, which ties in very well, coincidentally, is my favorite part of the show was all of us backstage during Never Can Say Goodbye. This show you will find is a very ensemble piece. All the leads are, pretty even with stage time. I mean, it really is an ensemble show. And depending on how many you have in the dancing ensemble, it's a very small cast. And what was incredible to me is that all these Broadway icons, Adam Pascal, Carrie Butler, Roger Bart, Kevin Chamberlain, Faith Prince, everyone was backstage at all times. No one really ever went to their dressing room to have like a diva moment. And everyone was always, like the Seven Dwarves, just like piled on top of each other backstage watching each other perform. And during Never Can Say Goodbye, everyone, all of these like Tony Award winning people are just, back there with us making our Broadway debut. And we're all just like little kids in a candy shop watching this nun twerk on a slot machine. And it never got old. I mean, this happened the entire run. And so I think some of my favorite parts were actually backstage, just as like a really tight knit group that the equals, and it was really cool. So it's a really special show.
I love Kevin Chamberlain.
And
I met the guy.
I mean, my God, everyone was just. It was. I can't even like remember everyone because it was such a masterclass in like, all of these.
He was doing Addams Family on Broadway, right?
Yes.
So I went to the opening of Addams Family. My date was Elaine Stritch. That was my date.
I love that.
Yeah. So me and Stritchy, we go to the thing. It was. I could probably speak 30 minutes on that whole thing. But so we go to her watching the show, and she was like, Tommy Toon came up to her. And Tommy goes, what do you think? And she goes, sucks. Like that. So then we go into Nathan Lane's dressing room. We're hanging out with Nathan Lane, me and Elaine Stritch. And then Kevin Chamberlain walks in. And Kevin looks at me, he goes, ooh, you're big. You're handsome. Come to my side. Come to my side. And Stritch goes, forget about it, dude. Forget about it. We walked out.
Gosh, that's too funny. He's the nicest
so cute.
guy.
He's the nicest dude
super cool to us. We went back because we knew Paul through other friends. Yeah. We went back afterwards. So it's quite possible you and I brushed shoulders at some point. But
probably,
just brief hello with Seth, brief hello with Roger Bart. But we were standing there waiting to go back. And Kevin kind of poked his head out of a door, like the stage door, but still in the theater. Yeah. And my daughter was 13 at the time, 14. And she's a huge fan of the Jessie Show.
Yeah.
Like, Allison, there's Bertram. Go say hi. And she was super nervous. Yeah. So I grabbed her by the hand. I said, come on. So we walked over to him and I said, Kevin, would it be okay if we took a picture? And I saw he looked around. He goes, we're not supposed to do it here, but come here really quick. And so my daughter has this fantastic picture with her and Kevin Chamberlain. And then we went back.
He's the sweetest guy.
Oh, it like that atmosphere that you talked about, as just someone who had just seen the show and was just experiencing the after effect. You could feel that with the way people were just kind of like just having fun and hanging out. And it was so cool.
It was really, like I said, I couldn't have picked a better show to make my debut with because it really was such a family and also, as much as the audience was laughing, I mean, we were laughing backstage too, constantly and on stage when we probably weren't supposed to. Roger Bart was a big culprit of trying to make us break. And yeah, I'm amazed I still have my equity card. But yeah, it's a really special show. Your audiences are just going to love it. Speaking of
Maggie,
Chamberlain,
Maggie, if you're not doing nothing next year, come on back.
well, there you go. I would love to see y'all's production.
Or be in it.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. I did want to
You
say
don't pay at all. You'll be screwed. You'll hate it.
so I wanted to, speaking of Kevin Chamberlain, I wanted to say something about the show, and I cannot say why it pertains to Kevin Chamberlain because it would be a major spoiler. But what I will say, and Eric and Chris, you can speak to, you know, if you would agree with this. We talk about how funny the show is and how it's a spoof of disaster movies, and it's very, you know, it knows what it is. It knows that it's funny and like making fun of itself in a way. But it has so much heart. And there is a moment in the show where people would always come up to me and they'd be like, oh my gosh, I laughed harder than I've ever laughed in a show, but I also cried and was really touched and moved. And I wasn't expecting that because I was having such a good time. And I think that's what's so special. And I think that's why it's had so much success regionally and throughout, is because it is funny, but it has a lot of heart. And there's a lot of amazing relationships in the show. So
I remember that part you're talking. It's a great moment. And also, fun fact too, Joe, you just talked about Kevin Chamberlain doing Addams Family, obviously.
Yeah.
So our Fester from last season is also playing Maury this season.
Oh,
the
fun.
casting.
Yeah, so same actor, and he fits the part really well.
Yeah, I love.
He's one of those where you look at him, and we will always see him as Fester. And I'm sure after Disaster runs next summer, he will always be Maury.
Yeah,
I came back outside because the neighbors put the dog away.
Oh, well, there you go.
That's
Okay.
it. And you guys cared.
Yeah, I know. Everybody was wondering. We had so many
I know.
comments.
Everybody's like, where'd he go? But I just had to go inside.
Hashtag bring Joe outside.
Oh God. Anyway.
Okay, I'm gonna just do one closing question because quite honestly, you have been so generous with your time, Maggie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure and honor. I just want to. I like to ask this question just because it's such a broad one, but it's always one of the you really have to think about. You know, you should think about it before you go into the show, and then after you've been a part of it, did we accomplish it, kind of stuff. But what should the audience really come away with after seeing Disaster?
That's a very good question. So I feel like for me and for a lot of people, theater is an escape to experience, you know, stepping into somebody else's shoes for, 2 hours one night. Oh, I know Jodie Benson. I did a show with her in Nashville when I was in college. She doesn't know who I am. She came and saw Kinky Boots on Broadway, and I was like, "Hi, Jodie. You don't know me, but I met you once. I have a picture with you in a prom dress."
That's hilarious.
The loveliest woman ever.
She was just here on Sunday. We were or Saturday. We were talking to her on Saturday.
I was
she's
born.
super cool.
Well, you could probably Google my age, but my first
24.
I know. No. But I grew up singing The Little Mermaid. I was that generation. So I tried to sound like Jodie Benson my whole life. I love her so much. But going into Disaster, people can expect to laugh until you pee. So maybe wear some protective underwear. But you really will. You'll just walk away with. You probably will feel like, oh, my life isn't so rough. These people just went through it. It's a really heartfelt show. It's hilarious. You're gonna, if you grew up with 70s music, it will really take you back. But you're gonna see it in circumstances that you weren't expecting. So it's gonna surprise you. You'll never expect 25 or 6 to 4 or
no.
once, twice, three times a lady. You never expected what's going to happen in that song. And so expect to be surprised and to laugh. And these are real, they're real people. They're archetypes, but our director always told us the reason why it's funny and why it works is because these are real people in real circumstances, and everyone can connect to someone in the show.
That's awesome.
You'll
That's so
find
awesome.
a version or someone you know and love up on stage. So
I have to say, with Maggie, we were doing Kinky Boots last fall, and sometimes people don't realize that, but when you're doing a show like that, and I'd done Kinky Boots maybe 400 times, Maggie's probably done more or less. I don't, somewhere around there, right?
I lost count.
And so everybody thinks that, like, they see you in the audience and you go off stage and they think you're standing there preparing to go right back on stage. No, I go back to my dressing room, I check ESPN, I text my friends or do whatever. So one of the days we were in Maine, and I went back to my dressing room, and Maggie and I, our characters had like a 20-minute break. I can't remember. I think it was first act. Somewhere in there we had like a 15, 20-minute break.
Yeah.
Where Don and Lauren weren't on at the same time for something.
Ooh, Marilyn.
So I go back.
Sorry, Joe. Marilyn knows what's up with this song. She added her emojis.
Oh, once, twice, three times later. Yeah.
I'll text you later, Joe, and tell you.
Oh, yeah. Tell me.
Yeah.
So I go backstage, and I picked up my phone, and I see something on Instagram, something from Starlight announcing the season. And one of them was Disaster. So Maggie, if you remember, I went down to your dressing room. I'm like, would you be willing to do this before we knew about COVID, before we knew about virtual Starlight, anything? Would you be willing to do a little quick video about your experience with Disaster?
Yeah.
That was October.
That was months ago. Yeah.
So it's like now full circle. So anyway, Maggie's the best, and she's been willing to help with Starlight since October.
Yeah.
I guess.
I'm so happy that I could be here, and I love this show, and I think that once you see it, you'll understand why. Special my heart, and I have a million stories. I could talk for 5 hours, but nobody wants to listen to that. I'm
come out next summer, and Chris Brady will get you tickets to Disaster.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's the least he can do for turning your short video that you were going to record into an hour on Facebook Live.
I know,
and free tickets.
Hey, what? I'm back. I can't tell what I'm doing because of the
other side.
Yeah. I'm so turned around. This is opening night gift of Disaster. These are all the characters that we see.
Oh, so cool.
How do I make you bigger? I'm trying to be like, I don't know.
Don't worry. It's fine. I don't need to.
You know what? Maggie can screenshot that and send it to me. She'll take a photo and send it to me.
I just was like, this was out somewhere else in my home. And anyway, I don't know why I said that other than just be like, yay, Disaster, woohoo, love it. Squigs, but
hey, Mac, how long did it run on Broadway for? I don't remember.
Not very long. It was only supposed to be a limited run, but there were lots of factors. Hamilton being one of them, which is like
I've never heard of that show.
It's like worth all of it's historical and worth all of the hype. So don't hear me saying that I'm obsessed.
I mean, Joe's a big part of that other show. One of my favorite shows of all time that also got kind of swept under the rug because of the producers.
Full Monty got pushed under the rug because it was Full Monty got pushed under the rug. A little thing called producers, and then this little thing called 9/11.
Yeah.
So that whole thing just got trapped. But even without 9/11, producers was kind of like with Disaster with Hamilton, same thing.
Well, and Disaster is a very specific show, and so that is part of it too. But I think that we all know that with finances, I think especially people are experiencing this during COVID. When you go to New York and you can only spend a certain amount of money on tickets, whereas there's been years in the past where a family would go to like 3 or 4 shows in a New York City
Yeah.
trip. Everyone was spending their money on just one show as opposed to like multiple shows, just because the finances got really crazy with big hits like Hamilton and things like that. So, it is what it is.
Hey, Maggie, off subject, but I think it's right for the Starlight community. People have been asking me about, like, when's Broadway coming back? When's it coming back? And I always say middle of next year. Yeah. And people always say, well, why so long? I go, well, it's not like it's a bar or restaurant where you just come in, sweep the floors, throw ice on the beer, put money in the register, and you open, right? You have to recast it some of the times. You have to, like, retech it. You have to do everything. But more importantly, people that are going to buy, if everything was normal, no COVID, right? Everything was happy days, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to go buy a ticket to whatever show, Hamilton, in December, and if you're in Rockford, Illinois, you're buying your flights, you're buying your hotels, you're doing all that now. So the advanced ticket sales are going to be way behind, in my opinion. Have you heard anything different than that? Because I just think Broadway is going to be pushed back.
Yeah, from what I've heard, it will be closer to spring of next year.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that Broadway, I also, I'm an actor. It's not like I have a lot of money laying around to buy like full price tickets. But I think what people don't always know what they're paying for when they get a Broadway ticket. There are great resources for rush tickets. That's what I do different rush tickets and lotteries and whatnot. But if you pay full price for a ticket, it has gotten, unfortunately, really, really expensive. But I hope that people know that that money that they're paying for, has so much more to do with just, it's like, for instance, right now, these theaters that are not putting on a show and getting any revenue, they're still paying rent. They're paying, like, I think an average Broadway theater rent is like $20,000 a month or something. So or more, yeah. So, you're paying for the backstage crew and the ushers and the design and the costumes.
It's all unions too.
We see 20 people on stage, and I think sometimes people that aren't in the business don't realize that, you're supporting live theater and going to a live show like a Broadway theater or a regional production or a community theater. You are supporting the livelihoods of so many more people than you realize. It's not just the lead up on stage or the third chorus person to the left. It is everyone that has stitched the set and painted the set and is running the spotlight. You're supporting an entire community, and so I think it will take a while, just because it also is close quarters and audiences sit close together and people sing.
Also, it's also not just people, like, you can put like 5 seats apart from each other, but they're also going through, if you go to any show in New York, you go through a bomb or a ticket booth like this close.
Yeah,
so what are you gonna have one come in at a time? So then you have to line up 90 minutes before the show.
Yeah,
I have dear friends of mine. They own a bunch of restaurants and stuff, all around the Broadway community.
Yeah,
and they're paying $50,000-$60,000 a month in rent.
Yeah,
and
they have no. Yeah, it's so when you can, and I hope people will support y'all tonight as they're watching. When you think about, when it is time to, right? My musical theater director in college would say everyone on stage is just as important, from the lead, and then she would say third mushroom to the left. That was her phrase was, it doesn't matter if you are the lead and the star or the third mushroom to the left. Everyone is important on that stage, and everyone is treated equally. So you could be the third mushroom to the left. I don't know what show that's from, but maybe Into the Woods.
I love it. I love it.
I don't think so.
Anyway, so I would urge everyone, when you can, I'm not trying to be too preachy, but when you can support live theater, know that your money is going to a good cause, and it doesn't, it's. So I hope people will donate tonight. And,
Maggie, for your information, I donated some money to Starlight Theater, and apparently it's to the Joe Coots Memorial Fund. So, yeah. So if you want to, it's for the Joe Coots Memorial Fund to go to help the sound, or Chris, what was it? Sound to Save Starlight or something.
Save our sound at Starlight.
Save our sound. So someone already threw money in there. And they came back and they get a letter and they're like, "Thank you for," or an email. I'm sorry, "Thank you for donating." And then they asked for my obituary to learn more about Joe.
You're like, we just want to know more about Joe. Who's this Joe? Can you send us his obituary?
And then
So I told my dad, who's 81. I said, "Dad," I said, "they just think I died." He goes, "Well, can I donate to that fund too?"
I love that. Oh no.
Guys, we could, I could sit here and talk all night about theater, about Disaster specifically, and talk to Joe, just because Joe and Maggie, you're fantastic. Eric, whatever.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll see each other sometime.
Eric, you're the best.
Eric, I know I just met you, but I feel like you are going to be a fabulous Ted Schneider.
Oh, thank you. I'm really looking forward to it. If for nothing else, that I can at least be in my wife's favorite show.
Exactly. I'm so thrilled to know that someone who and I think that speaks volumes to the show, is that it's a different kind of musical. So like you said, your wife was not super into, musical theater,
right,
as we would think of as jazz hands and tap dancing, which there is some tap dancing in this show.
A little bit.
There it
is. A little bit. Can you tell I'm looking really forward to that again?
But I think it speaks to that she loved it so much. And so I think, it's not your average musical. It's not your average jukebox musical. And it's it's that off-kilter kind of entertainment. I love it.
The music definitely hooked her, but she loved the comedy, and she's a huge Jen fan as well. I feel like I can call her Jen because you call her Jen, right? So, but she's a huge Jen fan. So I hope if you come and see the show, you at least get to meet my wife, so that my wife can put praises on you for being part of such an awesome show.
Yeah.
I also think Eric. I think Maggie could also if her friend Jen wants to send her something or do something, she would do that for your daughter.
Really?
Probably, yeah. Jen is
I'm putting Maggie on the spot.
No kidding.
Jen
no pressure.
She is one of the most generous people I know, and she. Speaking of equal players, Jen spent her first few Broadway shows in the ensemble and broke into these amazing principal roles very deservingly, and but she has such an appreciation of the whole picture, and so she was always checking in on us in the ensemble. And when I played the Nun in Connecticut, she, was sending me videos on opening night and messages and giving me tricks. So whoever's playing the Nun, Jen would sing "Never Can Say Goodbye" while jumping rope, and that's how she got her stamina to belt those crazy notes while
Risa Garner.
Wow.
I don't know what your jukebox will be. Not jukebox, slot machine, but that thing's heavy. The ones we use. And she's, if you watch it, she's pushing it around and she's belting to the high heavens. And because we love an option up. And
option up, girl.
And so she would share. She shared those little tidbits with me of how to get in shape to do the role. And I had the privilege of watching her create the role throughout the years and with a different song, because there was a different song off Broadway. But she was always generous in sending me messages and stuff. And
Maggie, remember Cyndi Lauper would be like, "You got to do it in the pocket. Do it in the pocket. You got to feel it in the pocket." I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? She pulls me.
I'm glad you didn't know that right away, because I'm sitting here going, is that some insider theater thing that I don't really know?
I sing like 8 notes in Kinky Boots, We go into a rehearsal studio by ourselves, me and Cyndi Lauper, for 30 minutes. My voice is gone for like, it's like, you got a good shot, but like, you feel it like in the pocket. Feel like in the pocket. Then she walks out into the rehearsal studio and she goes, Joe's finally got it. He's got it. He knows what in the pocket is. Meanwhile, I had no idea what the hell she was talking about.
Oh my God, I love it.
And Aremus came up to me. He was like, Stephen Aremus, who was the guy. He's like, I don't know what she was talking about to you either, but whatever. Just
Well, you got it. So that's all that matters, right?
Well, you
Yeah.
did it. You're amazing.
Oh, now we got this.
Well, and
Nice.
the Joe Coots Memorial Fund, which you can donate below.
Yeah, Joe
I
Coots
love
Memorial
the
Fund.
scrolly thing up on here. It's one of my favorite things. I'm like, scrolly time? Okay.
Send it to Cyndi Lauper in the Pocket Memorial Fund. Anyway,
Guys, you have been extraordinarily generous with your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric Wilson, thank you for joining us. Joe Coots, you
Hey,
are
thank you.
fantastic as always. I learned a lot from this man growing up, and none of it's good.
I can see that.
yeah. Same with Maggie.
Maggie, you have been so great. Thank
Maggie,
you so much.
thank you.
Yes, I
Well,
told
keep
Joe.
posted and keep in touch, and if there's
Maggie, by the way, I talked to
No.
Leanne today from Memorial. She says to say hi.
Oh, Thomas was talking about her today.
Really?
This is like insider conversation, but
Perfect. We're just gonna leave.
but yeah, she gave my son a dinosaur toy, and he was telling me about it today.
Yeah.
And he was like,
I'll
I got
call
this from the restaurant.
I'll call you tomorrow and fill you in.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I feel like everything is just like so.
And
awesome.
Eric, I'll be here for a little bit. I've already been through the corona. I had it tested positive, so I can go see people. I can hang out. So if you want to meet up or whatever, let me know.
So you're immune now? We can go hang.
Yeah, I've already given plasma once, and I'm giving it again on Friday.
Oh wow! I didn't even know you were back in town. So yeah, we'll have to do something.
Yeah. So I'm
cool.
around.
And that goes for everybody in the comments. Joe is available.
I'm available.
Joe's here. All right, guys. Thank you. Virtually Starlight has been made so much more awesome because of you. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you. That was
This
so
is super
cool.
cool. Yeah, thanks, Maggie. It was so nice to meet you.
Well,
Hey,
and I
Wall,
saw
awesome.
you made my night.
you guys were there in New York, which, as you know, is really special because we didn't run for super long, and so I think that's like really special to hear that it had such an impact on you, and now you're doing the show, and I think you guys are going to have a blast. And audiences, even though you've never heard of it, like that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. That means you should come and see it and laugh your butts off. And if you're feeling pretty bummed about life right now, the characters in this show and their disasters will make you feel so much better. They really
It is
will.
that funny. It really is that funny of a show.
Yeah.
It is. I've been billing it as the most fun we're going to have ever at Starlight just because it's so much fun. Maggie, is there anything you would like to leave our audiences with? Anything you want them to know before we take off?
Hang in there. Stay home. Wash your hands. Wear a mask. But yeah, when you do get the chance to support live theater, when it's safe for us to all gather, I hope you'll support Starlight and any other live theater, because it is an industry that's being really hit really hard during Corona. And I know we think about, I think that live theater is really vital to our mental health and our chance to that community and to gather. And so I think we're all missing that. If you're binging Netflix, you get it, And I think when we do gather again and we listen to live music and hear people sing and dance and have that beautiful escape, it's going to be a really special time. So however you can support live theater in the meantime, please do. Because these virtual events are amazing, but there's nothing like, streaming shows and videos is not the same as being in an audience and being on a stage and that connection with each other. So I can't wait for you guys and for the whole theater community and for audiences. I just hope that's what I'd like to leave y'all with. I know I'm rambling. I'm sorry. I've been up since 5:30.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have a 2-year-old, but yeah, whatever you can do, just be safe and support this industry in this like really weird time.
Awesome.
Love you, Maggie McDowell.
Love
We can't wait
you.
to
Thanks for
on
having
Broadway
me.
as well. Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much,
coming.
everybody.
Thanks for coming.
We're signing out. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Maggie.
Bye, y'all.
Bye,
Thank
Joe.
you.
See you guys.